Part 1 Propaganda. Daughters of Khaine are a matriarchal theocratic dictatorship devoted to murder, blood sorcery, and power. Some wonder why such an overtly evil and violent cult is in the Grand Alliance of Order, but this is an elven god of murder, which means it's our evil cult. Also, Order does not technically mean good guys, obviously. It just means we have to stop chaos and death from not only killing everyone in the entire world, but in Chaos's case, twisting that world into a horrific extension of the Chaos realm itself forever. Desperate times call for strong leaders, willing to do whatever it takes to gain the strength required for victory. Chaos will fall to power, not platitudes. Welcome to the Daughters of Khaine faction focus. Ruled by Morathi, the High Priestess of Khaine, whose initial appearance in the mortal realms was confusing and unfortunate, but she quickly found footing and a place amongst the early powers, despite being cursed with a lack of godhood. This showed off her first lesson: adapt immediately. She demands obedience and performance, and is of course secretly siphoning off all the worship energy from the Khainite cult to herself instead of the dead god Khaine. Second lesson: behind the scenes or not, be the sole ruler and shape your society. While the males are raised in subservience to perform maid duties, the females live their lives entirely in the temple arenas, learning ritualistic sacrifices and blood rites, with ceaseless live weapon combat training that many do not survive. To fight against the Daughters of Khaine is a lesson in hopelessness and pain, often a short lesson. Whirlwinds of blades and death sprint across the battlefield with faith as their shields, and also shields. Blood magic frenzied berserkers, she-elves, and Lamian royal guard snake ladies fight in a dance of death. Despite their brutal methods, the Daughters of Khaine gain more and more allies and colonies within the great cities, their councils desperate to keep the demons at bay. Third lesson: become necessary. From here we get to some of that nice moving the story forward stuff that has been really quite refreshing in Age of Sigmar. The time of preparations is over, and Morathi conquers Anvilgard from within, being sure not to slay a single Stormcast in the takeover. Can't have any little storm souls tattling on Mommy while they reforge in Azir. Lesson 4. Meticulous plans lead to decisive victories. She begins the ritual of godhood, submerging herself in the trapped body of Slaanesh, luring powerful elven souls to her with the Ocarian lantern she stole from the Deepkin. The full might of Idoneth, led by Volturnos himself, spearheaded an assault on the city to reclaim what was his. But he was too late. The ascension was complete, and after tossing Volturnos around the temple chamber like a toy with her new god powers, she showed mercy and foresight, with a true apology and great recompense. Let's call the lantern borrowed, shall we? Gaining valuable Deepkin allies who are always hungry for new souls. Lesson 5, Leverage. Now the bifurcated, dual-body, one-mind god-being Morathi Khaine, she commands her armies of daughters that have never been more powerful or more impactful to the realms. Or more fun to play. The Order Pantheon chafes at her violent methods, power grabs, and arrogance. But Lesson 6, with enough power, you become undeniable. Part 2 Models. I won't mince words, there's a lot of skin to paint, and faces, and both of those are a concern for new painters. But the best thing to do when faced with a challenge is to pile in. It's only paint and thin twice if you listen to Duncan, so if you mess up, just paint over it and follow some good guides. Good news, the meme of just play what you like is actually true here for once. Almost everything is great. Let's start with the big guns, and in my opinion one of the best looking centerpieces in the game, Morathi. Which is really Morathi Khaine and the monstrous Shadow Queen. They come as a pair, and the elf form counts as your general in addition to whichever other general you pick. Double Jennies. She's a powerful wizard and good synergy piece. 3 spells a turn and 2 unbinds a turn, both at +1. Has a long-range damage spell and a command ability that lets a unit fight or shoot in the hero phase, which combos well with teleports if you're going for a shoot combo snake list. Dual form and Ironheart of Khaine provide her near invulnerability, a lesson learned when the last god of murder got murdered. Damage she takes is dealt to the Shadow Queen instead. Neither can be slain outright by a death spell or ability. Instead, the Shadow Queen takes 3, and the Shadow Queen may not take more than 3 damage per turn for any reason, even mortal wounds. But if either die, they both die. And Shadow Queen is just a powerhouse murder monster. Flying 14-inch move, out-damages a charging Frostlord, rain or shine. Mind Razor gives her nitrous juice, and again can't take more than 3 damage a turn. Truly a proper god. I hope you're taking notes, Alariel. Not exactly an auto-include technically, but about as close as you can get, which is good. AOS is at its best when the awesome-looking stuff is great on the table as well. After that, you have a cavalcade of excellent buff heroes on foot. Hag Queen with her prayers and sippy cup of battle shock immunity and melee wound rerolls. Slaughter Queen for her prayers and double pile-in command ability. Melisai Ironscale for her awkward attacks buff that probably won't work. And her Ultra Zoomer Snake Speed command ability that probably will work. And Bloodrack Medusa for her spells and OK Hordebreaker Stare, although no proper synergies there. Finally, you have giant buff wagons that look like a cross between Cinderella's pumpkin carriage and a torture chamber. They're all very slow at 6 inches with some minor attacks, but each has a hero on top. Bloodrack Shrine gets a short-range D3 Mortal Wounds Pain aura, Medusa's OK Hordebreaker Stare, and a spell with 2 unbinds. Hag Queen on Cauldron of Blood gets her prayers and sippy cup, plus a powerful blood shield out to 18 inches for +1 armor saves. Very nice. It also has an avatar of Khaine at the top for some good attacks once it's animated. Slaughter Queen on Cauldron of Blood also has an avatar of Khaine, prayers, and the blood shield, but gets her double pile-in command ability instead of the sippy cup. Not bad. The Warcry Warband also has a sippy cup. On Battleline, Doc have great options. On the elf side, there's Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter. Each have about as much armor as, well, they look like they have, at a 6-up and 2 attacks, plus they naturally run in charge, which is very strong. They each can either have another knife attack or bucklers for +1 to save in melee that kick back mortal wounds on 6s to save. Sisters are a little more expensive, but can activate and pile in 6 inches rather than 3, which is very strong. Both units are primed and ready to absorb all those buffs to become scantily clad lawnmowers on the battlefield. On the snake side of Battleline, there's Blood Sisters and Blood Stalkers with the right general. Blood Sisters are giant armored melee Lamia with good attacks and rend, but over twice as elite as even Sisters of Slaughter with a poor save, so they are fragile. They can't run and charge naturally, but they do get bonus mortal wounds at the end of each combat and will do a staggeringly high amount of damage with all the right buffs. S-tier dam for sure. Stalkers are the bow snakes with pretty nice ranged attacks, 2 at 24 inches, reliable with rend and 6s to hit become mortal wounds. Also fragile, but shooting twice per turn with Morathi Khaine, they become quite strong. Snake or elf focused are both great, with different strengths and weaknesses. Let's look at the rest of the units. Khainite Shadow Stalkers are a relatively weak but fun little all-arounder unit that can do a little bit of everything kind of alright. They have some shooting, some attacks, weak armor, but they're at -1 to get hit in melee, and can teleport each movement phase, which is a nice trick. Doomfire Warlocks are an interesting but out-of-place unit that I think would be played if they were in some other army, but don't fit well in Doc. A fast unit of horseback wizards with a cool ritual spell that does more damage the more wizards there are, plus some OK attacks, and +1 to cast when there are 5 or more models. Nothing is terribly wrong with them, they just feel out of place, and end up getting cut from most lists guilt-free. Then there's Kinnerai Life Takers and Heart Renders, which make up your Deep Strike component, which is very useful. Both are fast flyers at 14 inches. Got a 6-up save, 5-up in combat, and 6s to save kick back a mortal wound. Life Takers are the melee ones, with 2 attacks a model primed and ready to absorb your plentiful buffs, as well as a healthy charge bonus, making their hits rend 1, damage 2, very nice. Also on a 4-up, they can retreat out of combat after they attack. Heart Renders are the shooting version, throwing version, with reliable attacks at rend 1, but only 1 shot per model. The turn they deep strike, they get rend 2, however. They can run and shoot, and after they throw on a 4-up, they can move 6, although not to retreat. Both are good in their own ways and make a fine addition as pinpoint deep strike damage. There's also Avatars of Khaine, which are suspiciously cheap monsters with great attacks and boiling blood shooting. Kinda slow for a non-flying monster with a bad save, but 130 points is mad cheap. What's the catch? Well, it's an inanimate statue until animated with a prayer or waiting until round 3 or round 2 in Hagnar. I think they're neat. Rounding out the models, we have Endless Spells. Bloodrack Viper is a predatory endless spell with setup 9, move 9. Rolls 3 dice against the unit they land near. Each roll, equal or above the wounds characteristic, slays a model. Not terribly impressive, but has a large footprint for blocking lanes, which is often the main power of endless spells. Blade Wind is a fairly standard setup 9, move 12 endless spell that does D3 mortal wounds to anything it touches. Kinda boring. It also removes cover bonuses, which rarely matters, so still meh. The third is an invocation, so a priest needs to summon it. Setup 12, non-predatory. Doc units wholly within 12 take 1 fewer damage per attack, minimum 1, which really hampers multi-damage enemy weapons, but doesn't do anything against damage 1. Real hit or miss. Part 3 Playstyle. Daughters of Khaine are Usain Bolt Lawnmower Death Stars. Their basic units are glass cannons, meant to absorb excellent combat buffs of all types, ability, CA, spell, and prayer, while also enjoying good speed and stellar defense if built for it. The plan is very similar to that of, say, Khorne, except Doc had the brilliant idea to start with units that are good in the first place. I hope you're taking notes, Khorne. That means cheap, fast, with multiple attacks. And while it is true that so many buffs are going to require a bit of a Death Star formation, that is, deploying and staying within various ranges to keep the buff juice flowing, it isn't quite to the point of straitjacket that some other armies must suffer because their holy number happens to be small. For Legion's abilities, we start with Blood Rights, a table of progressive and cumulative buffs that your whole army enjoys, with a new one each battle round. These are relatively minor, being reroll 1s of various types, but the key turn is 3, to get reroll 1s to hit and animate statues of Khaine. They also have Fanatical Faith, which is a 6-up ward against wounds and mortal wounds army-wide. No need to be close to a hero, like in Death. Then you choose a temple that your army is devoted to. They act as sub-factions, and GW really took it seriously this time, because they're all interesting and fun. You'll love to see it. The first one is Morathi's own temple, Hagnar. They accrue blood rights 1 round faster, which is low-key strong. Your wards improve to a 5-up, wholly within 12 of your general, which is high-key strong. Your Cauldron of Blood gets a 3-inch speed boost CA to better sprint across the battlefield with buffs still intact, and you get an artifact. Durable, fast, powerful. Hagnar continues their legacy of strength. For the aggressive, there's Draichi Ganeth. Your elf troops army-wide get +1 rend on the charge, which is incredibly strong. You get Infinite Blade Works as a CA that lets your elves hit on 2s, your artifact is +2 attacks on the charge, and you get a trait. For a themed Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter army, these girls worship at the Temple of Charge Damage, and I approve. Kraith are the Murder Casino Temple, for those feeling lucky. At the end of each combat, roll a die for each Sisters of Slaughter unit that fought. On a 5-up, they fight again. Oh baby. Your CA gives them +1 to wound for nice round 3s and 3s. Your trait gives you a command point per turn if you destroy an enemy unit, and a glass venom dagger you can shatter once a game for d6 mortals in melee. Focused on Sisters of Slaughter and a bit random, but hey, I like the stock. And so does my friend Chuck Moore over at Strengthhammer, whose personal lore for his Kraith girls was canonized within the game as Hag Queen Teyrathi, for helping out with the Battle Tome. I won't tell him if you won't tell him. Calebron is the Shadow Trickery Temple. You're at -1 to get hit from shooting army-wide, and your general is a Mistress of Illusion, and is also at -1 to get hit in melee. You get a Mortal Wound proccing dagger, and your CA is a straight-up teleport, which is always game-changing. Keltnar is the Combat Tricks Temple. You can retreat and charge army-wide, which is deceptively powerful, much more so than a new player might think. Your CA kicks back Mortal Wounds on any attacking enemy unit for each 1 they roll to hit. Once per game, you can summon a free unit of Harpies and deep strike them, not bad, and an artifact weapon with exploding hits. Finally, Zainthar Kai is the Overt Snake Lady Temple. They're at +1 bravery, and you get an extra artifact for free. Your CA gives them +1 attacks with all weapons for better lawnmower action. You get a melee Mortal Wounds trait and a Crimson Protection artifact for -1 to wound rolls against that hero. On generic stuff, you still get a few tables of normal traits, but there's no universe where you wouldn't take a temple, so these are largely a waste of ink. For artifacts, you have the powerful 5-up ward, +1 to cast, once a game hero-only teleport, maybe a reroll prayer rolls a 1, you got some nice options. For spells, you have great hero movement and teleporting choices to make sure you can put the buff heroes where their buffs are needed, plus a nice wound bonus. But the real reason you're here is Mind Razor. 8 to cast, which is difficult, but +1 rend and +1 damage on the buckets of dice you're throwing at people? So good. Your prayers are less flashy, but maybe not. Exploding hits, rerolling your ward, which is absurd, Battleshock community, your models explode when they die for mortal wounds on a 5-up, and more. Plus you have a few nice battalions with not only decent unit requirements, but good abilities as well. It's choose your own adventure fun time, kind of like Seraphon, except a little less restrictive. This is one of the good ones. Part 4 Stats. Offense, S tier, simply the gold standard for damage to which other armies are compared. Run and charge in 3 different ways, a teleport if in Calebron. They got melee damage, they got range damage, deep strikes of both types, fast flying murder monster who is also a god. Doc reminds us that it's not just pure output that matters here. You need to be able to put that damage where it needs to go. Also, a cornucopia of every buff type to bless buckets of dice with, be they elf or snake. Literal hundreds of damage if every buff lands and then you roll average. Although the best one does cast on an 8, so you gotta get a little lucky. But you have so many different buffs that you're bound to get at least a few of them every turn. And even a few of them is plenty to clap just about anybody in combat. Defense, B-, it's kind of hard. Note, often much better than B-, especially if Hagnar for 5-up wards and rerolling those wards with a prayer, making units within 12 of your general more durable than Nurgle. Also, even in other Doc armies, Shadow Marathi laughs at damage, straight up ignoring more than 3 per turn. Aside from these supreme exceptions, your average units have pretty poor armor, plus a 6-up ward, and if snakes, can be fairly elite. Positioning B+, maybe. Run and charge on everyone, even snakes with a CA, fast flying monster, deep strikes, sometimes retreat and charge, a full teleport if in Calibron, hero teleport spells. On paper, Doc seems like an easy A for positioning. But they do have to stay within buff zones for a little bit of a Death Star formation, which can hold them back, and some of these options are exclusive. Also, power projection to all parts of the table can often leave you without buffs or enough people. Mechanics A. Fast, plus movement shenanigans, plus ranged if they want it, plus the best monster in the game, plus the best damage in the game, plus over half your buffs can't really be interacted with since they're prayers or CAs or allegiance abilities that just happen. The sub-faction ones are all army-wide. It's a joy to play. Your opponent basically needs to figure out how to weather the storm, which often involves feeding you waves of sacrificial units in an effort to buy time. While that might win them the battle, in the campaign, Marathi is more than happy for more sacrifices. Part 5, Notes and Target Audience. Daughters of Khaine are running a hilarious murder-thon in tight formation, filled with, and I keep mentioning this, but considering over half of the 2nd edition Battletomes released so far felt rushed at best, this one bears repeating, you actually can just play what you like. The meme is real, the system works. Want to play barely clothed elven frenzied berserkers? They're good. Want to play the Lamian half? They're good. Shooting over melee? It's good. Beautiful centerpiece? She's great. Sub-factions? All but one are stellar, and that one ain't bad. Please let this be a sign of the care and quality we can expect moving forward for everyone on Battletomes. It's not all roses, of course. Death Star formations can be wonky, especially after deployment, and if they get spread out during the game, your powerful force multiplication heroes can get taken out for sure. Waves of MSU can chaff you up like any other mostly non-flying army. It's not a Willy Wonka ticket to free wins or anything. It's just good. Remember that it is still Age of Sigmar. Everybody dies. And the cost of entry ain't cheap. The army is on the pricey side, and there's lots of skin and faces to paint, so the hobby game needs to be ambitious. But Daughters of Khaine are for the faithful and dedicated servants ready to exult in glorious slaughter for their living god of murder. It's okay. It's our god of murder. Our enemies are demons, and that means that we are the good guys. Unnecessary evil. Audible footnote: if you don't care for the aesthetics, but like the style of fast whirling dervish kill hordes, consider orc war clans of any flavor. They really nail it. Special thanks to my patrons for keeping me alive. I stream on Twitch, stop by and chat about AOS, or just chill to video games. And thanks for watching.